I'd like to welcome back our viewing audience at home and in our studio from our commercial break. If you are just joining our program, our discussion topic today is Roman rule or God rule. Whom must we obey? With us today in our studio are three panelists. Each one of them is an expert in their field of study. Our first panelist today is Ethan Katz, an authority on Roman government. Ethan will present to us the view of Rome regarding rule in Jerusalem and the nation of Israel. Our second panelist is Leah Resnick, a Hebrew historian. Leah will provide us with the historical backdrop on the nation of Israel and God as the ruler of their nation. And our third and final panelist is Simon Moshe, a scholar and an expert in the study of the Torah and Jewish law. Simon will present us with the religious view of Israel regarding rule in their nation. We are going to continue now our discussion on the impact of Roman rule in the nation of Israel. Each one of our panelists have different views regarding this subject. Before we went to commercial break, Ethan Katz was saying how well he thought the country was under Roman rule.
That's not quite what I said, Ira. I can always count on you to misconstrue the intent of what I was actually saying.
Thank you, Ethan.
The point I was trying to make was things haven't been that bad under the Roman government.
You can't actually believe that, Ethan. We're paying significantly more in taxes, and we're getting nothing for it. Caesar's scoffers are getting bigger and bigger. Meanwhile, our people struggle.
Why should we have the Roman eagle flying over our heads? God is our ruler. We shouldn't have to serve two masters. We should strictly adhere to God's law. That's where we find our peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, I have to interrupt our program. I'm getting a live update from Jerusalem. Yes, I've just been notified that Jesus Christ has been crucified. I believe we have some live feed from the scene. Yes, we do. Panelists, reactions to this news.
Crucifixions happen all the time. What's so different about this one?
If he was who he said he was, why leave heaven and come to earth? If I were God, I certainly would not leave heaven to die on a cross.
Don't you understand what just happened? Jesus Christ, my Messiah, was crucified. It was for me. It was for you. It was for me.
For my debt paid,
We are now going to our on-the-ground reporter for a live update on this late-breaking news in Jerusalem.
We are live on the ground at the site of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. There are many in the crowd who are obviously upset and shaken with what's happened here just moments ago. There are people crying and upset, the likes of which I've never seen, but on the other side, we have people who are laughing, and it's almost like a festive atmosphere. Both camps they're yelling at each other, but I'm going to try to make my way over to one of the witnesses who apparently believes that the crucifixion of Jesus Christ was justified. Sir, after what you've seen here today, how can you be so full of merriment? Look, there are others here who are upset, and they're upset with what's happened here, but you and your friends, you're so happy. How can this be?
That man claimed to be God. He was flesh and blood, just like the rest of us. I mean, his lies are now revealed for all to see. How are we supposed to believe that this mere man was God?
Well, you know what? Well, sir, can you maybe tell me what's happening? Sir, well.
I can tell you what happened.
Okay.
Days earlier, he was taken by the high priest and the scribes to Pilate to be tried. One of his disciples, what was his name? I forgot. It started with a J. Judas, the one who betrayed him. I heard he tried to take the money they had given him for the betrayal and give it back. And he told them, he said, "I've sinned. This is innocent blood. He's done no wrong." And they said, "It's not our problem. That's your problem." He was so upset, he took the money and threw it on the temple floor, and they said he went out and he hanged himself.
So Judas ended up saying that Jesus was innocent?
Yes, that's exactly what I heard.
It's just like Jeremy the prophet said. And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, who the children of Israel did value.
Well, who can tell me what happened to Jesus next?
I saw the whole thing. Well, Jesus was brought before Pilate, and Pilate asked him point blank, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said, "It is exactly as you say." And that was all he said. Well, the chief priests and elders, they were accusing him, and Pilate heard their angry words, and then he said to Jesus, "Don't you hear the horrible things they're accusing you of?" But Jesus didn't respond. Now, Pilate, he seemed impressed with his composure. In fact, he seemed to like Jesus, but let me tell you, he was afraid of the crowd.
Yeah, and then another point, it was the time of the feast. And so this time he would release a prisoner. And of course, Barabbas, the murderer, is in the prison. And he thought nobody in their right mind would choose a murderer over Jesus because he made the people make a choice. He said Jesus or Barabbas.
And the chief priests, they got the people all stirred up, and they were yelling, "Barabbas, Barabbas, Barabbas." And then Pilate got all angry, and he yelled at the people, and he said, "What then should I do with this Jesus, the one who's called the Christ?" And then the crowd screamed, "Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him."
Pilate seemed so shocked. He said, "What evil has this man done?" The crowd, they were like a mob at this point, and they kept calling for Jesus to be crucified. And so he asked for some water to be brought to him, and he washed his hands in front of him, and he said, "I am innocent of the blood of this just man."
And you know what the people said then? Let his blood be on us and our children.
Oh, that's chilling.
They don't know what they're talking about.
Well, what happened to Jesus after that?
Pilate, he gave him to the soldiers to be beaten in the yard, and they put a cloak on his bleeding shoulders, and they put a stick in his hand as a scepter, and they made a crown out of thorns, and they smashed it into his head. They spit on him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, the King of the Jews!" And then they laughed.
And Jesus, he was already so weak from the beatings. I mean, they had to get somebody to help him carry his cross. I think his name was Simon. So they brought him to Golgotha. And someone tried to give him vinegar with gall, for the pain. And when he tasted it, he wouldn't drink it. And then they just crucified him.
And then they divided his clothes, and they cast lots for them. And they made a sign and put it over his head and said, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews."
Another prophecy about the Messiah fulfilled. And they parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots.
Well, what about the other two men who were executed today? I think were there two of them, is that right?
Yes, two thieves, one on either side of Jesus. The one, he mocked him along with the chief priests and the people, and he said, "Let God deliver him now. If he really is who he say he is, then let him come down from the cross with his own power, and then we'll believe what he said." The other, he said, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom."
What did Jesus tell him?
He said, "This day you will be with me in paradise."
And then it got really, really dark. And it was dark for like 3 hours. And Jesus was quiet during this whole time. But then about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we heard him cry out. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now, they thought he was just babbling for Elijah. Someone got a sponge and soaked it to give him a drink. Others just kept mocking. They said, "Oh, let's wait and see if Elijah comes to rescue him."
And he cried out again, and then he died.
Oh, but just before he died, he looked at me. And I'll never forget that look.